Hello and welcome to the studio where we paint away the stress of everyday life. But today I'm going to be answering 5 most common questions on a compilation of videos that I put together, which are going to take these questions into detail for you. I'm not currently painting in the studio this week because it's 107 degrees Fahrenheit, as you can see by the beads of sweat on my forehead. So all I ask is you give me a quick thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for weekly updates. And anyway, without further ado and cutting the waffle, let's get on to the 5 most common asked questions for Clive 5 art. Nice. But canvases is what we're talking about today. Now, these little canvases there are very inexpensive. Now, you can buy a pack of 3 of these in different sizes. So 3 different sizes in a pack for £2.99. That is stupidly cheap, yes. And some of the canvases I paint on, like this particular one there, I can get for 99 pence. Now I want to draw your attention to these little canvases, and as you can see, yes, they've got these little holes in there for these things that we call keys, which need to be put in place, and I'll talk about them in a little minute. But as you can see, that bar there, that stretcher bar, let's call it a stretcher bar, is very, very thin, flimsy, and it is actually touching the canvas itself. Now what happens with this is as you paint, that is going to show through, and in time, and let me show you, in time, even with the paint on there, these things are so cheap that if I shine a light behind it, you can actually see the light penetrating. These are okay, all right, if you're just practicing, or even if you're just doing some quick little paintings to sell on craft fairs. But I don't recommend these type of things if you're going to do archival work, or you're going to be doing some real good commissions like pet portraits, etc. So I would suggest you go up in price. Now what I mean by up in price is this is a gallery wrapped canvas. There you go, and I just dropped the keys because it does come with keys in it. Now a lot of these canvases, the cheaper canvases, won't come with these things, and they're very important. Anyway, there we are, lovely, really nice, really strongly made. As you can see, it's got a center stretcher bar, but if you have a look right in there, let me see, yeah, you are, you can see the shadow. I can put my fingers in there, look, that has got a chamfer on it. So not only is it a nice thick good chunky bit of wood, but you can actually put your fingers in there, and that means that the canvas is not coming in contact with that bar, so it's going to wear evenly or fade evenly, because paintings will fade over time, but it will fade evenly, so you're not going to have that horrible mark around. And not only that, you can tell a more expensive canvas, not just by these stretcher bars, and the most expensive ones you can get have also got little keys that can go in there that can tighten all that up as well. But look at the canvas, the darker the canvas there, the more expensive it is, and the better quality it is. So the darker the canvas, the better weave that you've got. What we've got here, we've got some short flats, we've got some fan brushes, we've got rake brushes, and we've got detail brushes, and we've got filberts, and we've got angled flats. And right, so I've got a rather large short flat. This is a size 16. It's quite soft, and I use that mainly for putting varnishes and things like that onto my canvas panels. You can use this brush for blocking out canvases or anything like that, and try not to do what I was doing then. Try not to rub the bristles with your fingertips if you can help it like that, because in your fingertips you've got grease spots, and the grease is going to actually come off and go on to your brush hair, or what do they call it? No, not hair, Clive, bristles, whatever, you know what I mean. And it can cause problems. I've never had that problem, but it can cause problems, so it's best to err on the side of caution, as you know. I got what they call a large hake brush. This is mainly used in watercolors, because acrylics are water-based. You can use the hake brush in the watercolor techniques that's shown on and you've read about, and there's a couple of artists out there that just use a couple of these and they can make fantastic paintings with the heat brushes. What I tend to do with the heat brushes, I tend to use it as a bit more of a blender. I don't use it very often because I use makeup brushes for blending, and you can pick them up inexpensive from a cheap art craft shop, anywhere like that, or you can use a woman's makeup brush, as I've explained in the past, and all that is to take the brush marks out of your paintings. Some artists like to see the brush marks in the paintings. It depends what you're painting, actually. We got fan brushes. These are mainly used in oils. You can get these in bristles, obviously, and they come in all different sizes. You can get a smaller fan brush, you can get a larger fan brush. Some are thicker than others, so make sure that you pick the right brush that you want. I think they call it a golden leaf brush or something. I'm not too sure, to be honest with you, but I know some of them have got a lot more bristle than others. You can get these in man-made synthetic fibers as well as bristles. I like the bristle ones myself because these are old oil brushes, but I don't use fan brushes very often, but you can manipulate those to your own needs. So if you can get one of them, that's great. These are what they call rake brushes. I've showed you these in the past, and if you have a look at that one and just let the camera focus on that, you can see that a percentage of the hair is longer than the rest of it. So what that's going to do, that's going to give you very fine lines for grasses and fur. I tend to use them in fur, and again, that's another rake brush, slightly bigger, or you can get smaller ones like that, or you can make your own. They're quite easy. Okay, so I'll show you how to do one of them in just 1 second. And this is called a sword brush. Again, I've used this for grasses. You can see the way it's chamfered. It's like a sword. It's got a little bevel there, and it comes to a nice sharp point. And they're quite long. If I wet that, you'll see that it can give you quite nice lines. You could use that for floral painting. I've used it occasionally in landscapes for long grasses and that type of stuff. I've also used it in fur painting as well. It all depends what type of fur I'm painting, because you've got long hair, long fur, short fur, you've got wet fur, you've got dry fur, you've got muddy fur. So it all depends. Sometimes I'll just think, oh, I'll use that brush. So that's all you've got to do, really. You don't need a wide selection of brushes. You just need a small selection of brushes. And I'm not saying go out and buy all these type of things. I'm just saying you see the brushes that I use normally during the painting, and that's all I tend to use. Now these are called detail brushes. I've explained these again in the past, and these can be from quite a large size. They can even go up to as much as a 16. I've seen a massive detail brushes. Why you would use one of those, I don't know. It all depends on the canvas, I should imagine, but I don't know. I think the largest I've used is a 14, and this happens to be a 12, but you can see they go down in size. That's a size 8, but then you go into the very fine detail brushes, and these are like 0s and 02s and 04s, and you can see the fineness of that there. I don't know if you can see, let the camera focus how fine that is. Now these do give you fantastic detail lines if you want to do a fur, a very fine detailed fur, say around the eyes or the nose or something like that. But the only thing they don't do is carry a lot of paint, so you've got to keep reloading all the time. But they are for eyes, that type of stuff. I've used them in grasses. It all depends on how fine a detail you want to do. But I've always got a selection of very fine detail brushes, obviously, because I used to do a lot of pet portraits. I don't do so much now. And then we can look at the half riggers or rigger brushes or strip liners. This is a graduate range. As you can see, they're a very fine long point, and again, that's ideal for branches on trees. You can do grasses with them, and you can even detail with these as well, or you can put rigging on boats. So a very good thing. Actually, I got quite a few of these. I got about 4, I think. So they're very good to actually put in your arsenal as far as the brush selection is concerned. Now, the reason I put this there, this is just a detail brush, it's like one of them, but it's got a very long handle. Now you might be wondering why there's a short handle and a long handle. Well, the reason for that is when you're painting, it gives you some distance and you can actually stand back and look and observe your painting as you're painting. So it gives you that little bit of a distance. Also, it gives you a little bit less control over the tip. So if you want to put some details in, like grasses or trees and branches, the further away you hold the brush from the ferrule, that's the ferrule. So if you're at the ferrule there, you've got a little bit more control. But as you work your way towards the end of the handle, your handles shake a little bit and you get a bit more of a wibbly wobbly line. And sometimes that's what we want, is a wibbly wobbly line. Okay, so we're going into short flats again. They all go. These happen to be 1.5 inch, but these go down progressively in sizes, right down to the small ones. I haven't got any small ones actually. I got one there. What number is that? That's a 2. See how small that is compared to that. So it all depends on what type of painting you're doing and how much detail you want. These are good for blocking out. They're also good for gessoing the canvas, etc. As you see, these are ones I normally give a bashing. I know these are the ones I normally use on a day-to-day basis. They get bashed about a bit, and I'll be talking about brush care in just a minute. I'll just put that in there. I've got a couple of soaking. Okay, and again they go down the small ones, and these are short flats, but they're angled. As you can see, they're chamfered on the edge, and you can get some nice clean lines with them. And again, it all depends on your painting and whether you think you need to use one of these. I do like the angled flats. They give me nice sharp edges. I can get a nice sharp edge like that. Again, they come in bristles. You've got bristle brushes as well. Bristle brushes are mainly used for oils, but I do use bristles quite often in acrylics for landscapes, scrubbing in backgrounds and putting my blocking out colours in. And I haven't got many filberts. I don't use many filberts. Filberts is basically a short flat, but they are rounded off like that. There you go. So if you think of a short flat, and you think of rounded edges, so that's all it is a short flat. With the edges taken off it, so it makes it into a filbert brush. And again, good for rocks and things like that. You can get these in bristles as well, and in various sizes. So that's just a very quick look at brushes. We use acrylic paint as a water base, so we can wash it out with water, which is a good thing because it doesn't get on your chest like oil paints with all those fumes. Now, what I don't suggest you do, and I've seen this so many times, and I did have where did I do a pot? I got a pot here somewhere. There we are. We'll use this pot. What I don't recommend you do is what I'm going to show you now, and the reason for this is quite simple when it's explained. So I'm just going to put a bit of water there. I've been asked this a couple of times recently, Clive, about the little pot you use next by your palette. Now, that's actually got a medium mix formula in it, which is like a flow improver, retarder mix, and that helps with the bonding of the paint. I'm not going into that, but that's all the moisture I use. I just dip into that like that, and then that's all the moisture that I actually use. I don't actually use water to thin my paint. Now, I don't recommend that you just put water in there and you go into your paint and then you back in there and you go back into paint and you go back in there, because that paint is eventually going to get so contaminated and so thick with pigment that you are not going to be cleaning your brush sufficiently enough to be able to do what you want to do, and it's just going to continue to build, and the thinner the paint, the more it's going to be able to run up into the ferrule. That's the ferrule there, and these hairs or bristles or whatever you want to call them are held in place with glue, and over a period of time the water will destroy that glue. It's inevitable, it's going to happen. So I don't recommend you put
just water in a little pot like that. The only reason I do that is because it's got a medium mix formula in it, and I don't actually wash my brushes in it. I wash my brushes out, then I go into there. So it's very rare that I'll contaminate that with pigment. The other thing I've seen is people will just use a pot of water like this for washing their brushes out, and they'll go in there and they'll carry on painting and they'll wash it again. But the problem you've got there again is exactly the same as you've got with a small pot, is this will get so contaminated you're not going to sufficiently clean your brush, and that is the key. Sufficiently clean is the key word. Ordinary soap like this works just as well. As long as you get that soap into the bristles, you get them nice and clean, you get all that residue out, and you just use the same pot for your dirty water. And then what I'll do, I'll go into some clean water then, just to make sure that that brush is clean and there's no pigment coming out of it. And I'll always tap it off with a little bit of tissue roll or kitchen paper. And I know that that brush is as clean as I'm possibly going to get it. So what I do then is you can either use some nail varnish remover, which is acetone based, so please be careful. It is flammable, it can be irritated, it causes irritation, and you try not to mix this with water if you can help it, because it will give off a nasty film. But you can use that for cleaning your brushes. The other thing you can get hold of is rubbing alcohol and isopropyl alcohol and distilled water. There you go. So you can get hold of some of that as well, and that's good for cleaning brushes as well. Now what I've got some nail varnish remover in the pot, and I've actually got my brushes soaking there, as you can see. Now this does happen to be in nail varnish remover, so I'm going to get some kitchen roll, and I'm just going to put some kitchen roll down, and these have gone hard actually, and you can see when I do this, you can see the muck that'll come out of them, and try and get as much of that muck out as you possibly can. Now I've shown how to do this in the past, but I thought it would be good if I actually redid this video, because I get so many questions throughout the week about brush care. Look at that, look at the muck coming out of them. You just break that up. You can use rubbing alcohol as well. I've used that in the past, and that works just as well. I'm just using the edge of a palette knife, trying to be as gentle as I can with the bristles. Okay, so I'm going to put that back in, and I'm going to continue with another one. And all you're doing basically is breaking down the old acrylic that's in that brush. I don't suggest you go above that mark there. Just try and keep the nail varnish remover to the bristles if you can, because otherwise you're going to break down that glue I just told you about. Dispose of that in the bin. Once you've done that, you can then proceed with some soap onto each brush, and then go into your water, and you wash these brushes out in the normal way. And what I suggest you do is don't put any chemicals that you're going to be using, including a cup of water, next to your tea or your coffee, because you will inevitably do one of two things. You're either going to wash your brush in your tea, or you're going to drink the chemicals. So don't do it. Don't. And I've done it all. Trust me. There has been times that I've gone, oh, what is that? And it was dirty water because I've had it in a jar. Yes, because sometimes I do things like that. Anyway, okay, so you need to prep the canvas correctly before you do anything. That is important. You need to put in your keys, which are going to stretch the canvas taut. This is a taut canvas. It's been in here learning all week with me. No, you've got to be a taut canvas. Okay, there's little blemishes on the surface, so I got a very fine
This is a P2000 grit wet and dry paper. It's very, very fine. And all I do is I just go over very lightly, just to make sure there's no little lumps and bumps on it. And if I do find one, I can just work on it very, very gently. Like a little brush then. Brush down your canvas, getting all the dust particles off it. You need to apply your gesso in a liberal manner, and don't overwork. Don't try and do all this, and don't try and overwork it. Just put it on, and if it starts to drag, then you just need to get a bit more paint, and you keep applying the paint. Or left, right, I should say left, right. That's it, that's better, right? And then once more, very, very light. I'm hardly touching it. I'm hardly touching it. And I'll say that again, I'm hardly touching it. Don't know why. Just think it was fun. Don't force dry the gesso. Let it air dry. So we've gessoed or primed, I should say, our canvas. That's all nice and dry now because we've tested it with the back of our finger. And I've got one that you would buy straight from the shop, and it's covered in PVC. And just looking at this particular one, there's already a hole in the plastic, and there's another hole over there. So obviously there's going to be dust in there, and I'm going to put this one side very carefully because we don't want to touch it, because I want to show you something now. And we're going to treat this like we would treat it normally if we just bought it from the shop and we didn't know anything about preparation. So we would take the cover off. And you can see I'm already holding it and I'm touching it, and there's a little dent there in the canvas itself, and there's a couple of little knobbles on there, and you can see, I don't know if you can see, but it's been damaged slightly by there. And the first thing people do is they'll take these little stick things off, which we know as keys, but they certainly do not. And the first thing they're going to do with them, throw them in the bin. But that's the first mistake, because your canvas is loose. The second mistake is we touch it and there's going to be dust on it. Now I'm going to put some paint on this one, and I'm going to put some paint on the other one, side by side, and see what difference it makes by having a properly prepared canvas to a just taken out the cellophane canvas. My shop bought canvas, which has come directly out of the plastic, compared to my primed canvas, and I'm going to use a blue paint on my brush. You can see how it's dragging, and it just seems to separate. Can you see that? So we put it on a bit thicker. I'll show you what I mean. Let's zoom in a little bit further. Now, as you can see how it's dragged, and it's starting to separate. The reason it's starting to separate is because there's grease on there, and what's going to happen if this is left to dry in front of the sunshine or something like that, the paint is going to flake away because there's nothing to stop it, even though this is our prime canvas. Same paint, same mixture, same brush. See how smooth that paint is flowing, and see there's no breakup, it's not separating. A little bit of contamination there, but that's okay. So that's our prime canvas that we primed, and we've kept grease free, and this is the shopboard canvas directly out of cellophane. As you can see the difference, and there's no difference in paint, there was no difference in brush pressure, there was no difference in the brush I used. It's just the fact that this has got more grease on the surface than that has. come to paint something, we need to put an undercolour on there. That's it. And it's going to be relevant, yes, it's going to be relevant to what you were painting. Now, I particularly like darker grounds, but it's entirely up to you. Leonardo da Vinci said the canvas should be washed with a light coating of black, because everything in nature is dark except where the light hits. Don't shoot the messenger, that's what Leonardo da Vinci said. Do you use acrylic or gesso? Question. What do you think? I personally wouldn't use just acrylic, because you need a bit of a key for it to go onto. Ideally you could have put a gesso on. Now, gesso comes in different colours, but there's absolutely no need for you to go out and buy anything besides white or black. Now, if you use a lot of black gesso, it's brilliant. If you don't use a lot of black gesso, don't waste your money and go and buy it. You can always mix ultramarine blue and burnt umber together, and that should make you a nice dark grey as a gesso. But if you're not going to use black per se, don't bother buying it. That's what I say. I use a lot of black, but that's my personal choice. Okay, there we go. What do we do? Well, I like using dark grounds, and you can mix your acrylic into your gesso. Gesso is a bit more chalky, but that's the nature of it. It's not plastic polymer based like the acrylic. Now, I'm not going to confuse the issue. Basically, you can mix acrylic with gesso to make a tint or a ground to put on your canvas before you start the paint. So ideally, you put the gesso on, whatever colour you want, let it dry, and then you do your pencil work or sketch out or whatever you want to do, and then you'll paint on top of the gesso like you would if it was just white. Does that make sense? I think it does. I'm not too sure. My head is starting to hurt. I think that's because my bend of my head is a bit tight. So we'll get that and chuck it onto the hat rack. Nice. First time. My name is Borden, James Borden, 007, licensed to kill, and I can throw my hat onto my coat. It's a working bench, as you know. It's an old mechanic's bench. Let me just get tidy. Right, there we are. It's a mechanic's bench, and this is where I do all my painting. Put some gesso in there, mix some gesso up. Okay, so let's put two of them out. I got some gesso in that one, so we'll use that up as we're going. So for the purposes of this demonstration, we get our gesso, which is in our squeezy bottles, because it's easy to decant. So we'll need to put a little bit in there and a little bit in there. We're not too worried about the actual colour because it's a ground per se. Get an old paintbrush, there we are. So we need that for stirring or anything. So I don't know. I'm going to tell you what. I'm going to go up as raw sienna. I don't want to go too dark. So I'll put about 2 peas worth in there, and 2 peas worth in there. And when I say pea, I mean a size of a pea. But it depends, as I said before, how big your peas are. Yes, like that. There we go. And this is not too dark, it's just a nice colour. Now obviously when you mix in a dark colour with white, it's going to lighten. So that's actually quite a nice flesh tone, look at that. Look. Okay. What you could do, you could start with the edge first, so you need to go down the edge as such. Up, down, and down the other edge. Now again, I normally do this 3 times, but that's personal preference. You can gesso it normally with 2 coats of plain white, and then you can put your ground on. But because this is, I would say 90% gesso, I always do the actual canvas portrait, or you can do it landscape. So it's entirely up to you. I shall do it portrait, and once the edges are dry, it's not you don't have to worry too much about doing the edges 3 times. As I said, I know that most of these gallery wrap canvases are painted. However, you know, it's not a major part of the painting really, is it? So as long as the main surface of the painting gets covered with gesso, at least a minimum of 3 coats, and that's what I do recommend. And then we just apply the ground onto the canvas. Now, as I said, depending on what you're painting, it really does reflect on what type of ground you need. So, you know, you can warm up a painting by having a nice warm background, or ground I should say, or you can have a nice cool ground. It's down to you. At the end of the day, you'll know what colour to put down. As I said, I normally go quite dark, because I like working off a dark surface.